country. My father is German, right? Was German, and born in a very wonderful place in Germany.
Hello everyone! Now we're going to explore more about the Deutsch Amerikaner, or the German American. Throughout the history, the German Americans had a huge impact on the society. Back in the 16th century, the Reformation took effect throughout Europe, resulting in the division of Catholicism into small, various sects. Being religiously different was extremely difficult in the past. A number of German immigrants crossed the Atlantic Ocean to begin a new life in America, seeking religious freedom. The very first German immigrants came and settled in the state of Pennsylvania in 1685. It was an invitation of William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania. They established Germantown, which is today a part of Philadelphia. The second wave, a bigger influx of Germans, arrived at the start of the 18th century. They were the Redemptioners, who had sold their labor as farmers to pay for the Atlantic crossing ticket. Following by the 1848, when there was a revolution in Germany, some Germans attempted a revolt against oppressive authority in 1848. Prior to the revolution, Europe had faced a difficult time when economic depression halted industrial expansion and aggravated urban unemployment. The hungry 1840s drove the lower classes, which had long been suffering from the economic effects of industrial and agricultural rationalization, to the point of open rebellion. The violent uprisings in Germany resulting in a number of deaths. '80s. In this decade, the decade of heaviest German immigration, nearly 1.5 million Germans left their country to settle in the United States. About 250,000, the greatest number ever, arrived in 1882. The German immigrants gradually came to America, and the population started to grow more and more. Many of them also came through the Ellis Island, the main U.S. immigration. And here is the handsome young man at the Ellis Island main immigration hall. And I just want to make this clear that he is not an immigrant. He is just a tourist. The pushing and pulling factors can be simplified into 3 reasons. First, it was the freedom of religion. Like many countries, the ruler got to choose the direction of the country, including the religion. The Germans are required to worship the same religion as the ruler. Conversely, the United States, especially in Pennsylvania, offered freedom of religion. That is why this factor has been one of the most significant reasons for German immigration. Secondly, in Germany, land is not free. It is extremely difficult to settle life down and make a good life. On the other hand, in America, the land was taken from the natives and given to the European settlers. As life was difficult in Germany, it is worth taking a risk for a better future. And lastly, technology was rapidly evolving during this time period. It was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Thousands of people arrived in America on larger, faster steamships. Railroads developed and flourished. People would be able to travel fast and effectively. Factories were established to manufacture a variety of new things that has just recently been created. The expansion of the railroad system, which coincided with the boom of American industry, resulted in the creation of thousands of employment in factories and the construction sector. Kindergarten is a preschool education that many kids go to. It stimulates a school environment where kids start to interact with each other, learn to play, sing, draw, and do other practical activities. It is a fundamental educational system for all kids to enhance their creativity and social life skills. Surprisingly, kindergarten was established by German immigrants. On the other hand, kindergarten has only been a part of the American experience for around 150 years. That's owing in part to Elizabeth Palmer, who founded the first English language kindergarten in the United States in 1804 and popularized the concept among English-speaking Americans. Kindergarten is a German invention since German immigrants founded the first kindergartens in the United States. They follow the concepts of educational theorist Friedrich Froebel, who established the world's first kindergarten in Blankenburg, Germany in 1837. Who likes hamburgers? I'm one of those. The city of Hamburg, Germany, during the 12th century was growing rapidly as a trading city where beef was the main product. A large influx of German immigration to the United States happened after the political revolution in 1848. Fleeing to America, the Germans have brought their traditions. Restaurants started to offer Hamburg-style shop steak, which since then has helped popularize what's so-called today hamburger. The Germans also had an influence on other foods such as sausages, pretzel, strudel, and above all, beer. Did you know that Christmas trees are grown in all 50 states, including Hawaii and Alaska? It's all started by the Germans. The Christmas tree is a symbolic plant that is able to remain green during the festive time, especially in the winter. People use Christmas trees for decorations. In many countries, it was believed that the evergreens would keep away witches, ghosts, evil spirits, and illness. Martin Luther was the one who added lighted candles to the tree. He was impressed by the twinkle stars, which reminded him of his family. The first recorded arrival of the Christmas tree was in the 1830s when the German settlers in Pennsylvania brought in the tradition. However, it was not popular at the beginning because the Puritans didn't like it. They viewed Christmas as a sacred day. So joy, excitement, and decorations would mean disrespect to them. The well-known royals, Queen Victoria and German Prince Albert, were depicted with their children around the Christmas tree in the Illustrated London News in 1846. Unlike the previous royal family, Victoria was well liked by her subjects, and everything she did at court became popular almost immediately. Not only in Britain, but also among fashion-conscious East Coast Americans. The Christmas tree was on its way to America.
At the same time of the war, America became the refuge of German fleeing persecution. The war in Europe certainly drove more people, especially German Jews, to immigrate to America. Unfortunately, the path of German immigration to begin a new life in America was not as smooth as they thought it would be. Here is a little reminder of the relationship between Germany and America during the mass immigration. The United States declared war on Germany in April 1917 and helped lead the Allies to the victory, and that ignited anti-German. Even German Americans whose ancestors might have been in the USA way back before the Revolution. America at the time was already racked by fear and paranoid from the war, and with this declaration on war against Germany in the Great War, people increased more fear and hate towards Germans. This situation led to the discrimination, prejudice, and mistrust against Germans. Germany was one of America's adversaries in the war. Many Anglo-Americans began to fear that German Americans were still loyal to the Kaiser or the German Emperor, in which this aspect of anti-German sentiment were fueled by Germany's presence in World War I. That fuel was ignited by the anti-German propaganda, ubiquitous among posters, pamphlets, articles, and books. In much of this propaganda, the Germans were referred to as the Huns, after the hordes of Asian warriors who had ravaged on Roman Empire, insinuating they were doing the same to Europe now. Suddenly, German Americans became hyphenated Americans, who suspiciously practiced their own traditional instead of assimilating into Anglo-American culture. Because of all the propagandas and hate toward the Germans. That's why the German Americans, the country's then largest immigrant community, became the targets of the discrimination and societal harassment during the World War I. Time by time, the hate and the discrimination toward German and German Americans were increasing. And you can see the crowd gathers for the German language book to be burning at the Barbaro High School in Wisconsin in 1918. Sketches are written in the words, "Here lies the remains of German in BHS." Other than that, the names of German food were removed from the restaurant menus. For example, the sauerkraut became the ribeye cabbage, hamburger became ribeye steak, even the German Dachshund dogs became known as the ribeye dogs. This wave of anti-Germanism was spurred by the war and had nothing to do with the Germans' degree integration in the US society. In response to this targeting, immigrants did not retreat from the society but instead did everything they could to reaffirm their belonging. Their decisions in response to the anti-Germanism was to be less German as much as they can, traditionally and identically. German parents were more likely to Americanize their children's name instead. Therefore, German children born after the war had more American names compared to their older siblings who were born just before the war. Later, the number of German naturalization petitions that became accepted by the courts dropping during World War I, as courts intentionally delayed the processing of those petitions, resulting in lower rates of citizenship acquisition among Germans. The discrimination reduced rate of political belonging for German immigrants, but this was not because of their retrenchment. Rather, it was despite their increased effort to claim membership into the US society. Does the discrimination towards Germanism still occur in the present? Unfortunately, the discrimination and the hate towards German and German Americans are still happened, but we can say that it is much less than it happened in the past, because many of Americans now inherit the German blood, as you can see in the picture. For almost 15% of Americans have the ancestor that rose to German blood. However, the discrimination still occurring, as we can see that the discrimination among the Germanism and other races are still occurs nowadays, as the immigrants and the members of the ethnic minorities are still experiencing discrimination in variety of settings. For example, job applicants with immigrant-sounding names have a lower chance of receiving callbacks from job interviews, and candidates of immigrant origin are less likely to be included on the electoral list by the party gatekeepers. A high percentage of immigrants report having experienced discrimination in their life are still occurring in both the US and in Europe.
Although the Germans and Irish came around the same period of time, the Germans were more favored because the Irish were associated with poverty, illiteracy, and crime. German has a little more reputation than the Irish, as they came with enough money, working skills, and education. Even though they were comparatively seen as a better class than the Irish, they were not that welcomed, as there were evidently anti-American campaigns in many different forms throughout history. American perceptions of Germans in the early 19th century were the tardiness, friendliness, and devotion to beer drinking. After America joined World War I, a sense of discrimination started to spread. The Americans saw the others with German ancestry not 100% American. In the article Anti-German Sentiment, several media outlets described German Americans as a threat to European civilization and the American principles of peace, democracy, liberty, and as aggressive, materialistic, barbaric, and uncivilized. Being a rival of your homeland, the German Americans were accused of being a spy. A lot of time they are reluctant to declare their stance against Imperial Germany just to prove their ties to America. Furthermore, the government refrained people from practice any German custom. Schools were required to teach English only. Kids were told to stop singing German songs. People were pressured not to drink German beer.
There can be no compromise in the fight for Americanism. I am confident that our people will work hand in hand with any public man who in good faith does all that is possible to see that the United States so conducts herself as a nation as to conserve the honor, the institutions, and the peaceful welfare of our own citizens. Our next business will be to help guarantee the peace of justice for the world at large. There cannot be, there must not be a repetition of the crime against Belgium. I am anti-brutality. I should protest as strongly against wrongdoing by any foreign power. The little nations of the earth have a right to live, and if civilization is to endure, the great nations must respect that right. Let us unite in the one great endeavor of achieving an enduring peace with all the world. But let us not forget that the surest promise of that peace lies in our constant preparedness to meet all eventualities from without and to combat and destroy all subversive elements working from within. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says that he is an American and seeks to promote foreign isms within our borders is not a true American. We have room for but one flag, the American flag. We have room for but one language, the language of the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. And we have room for but one loyalty, and that is loyalty to the American people.
Let's take take a look at these famous names who has German ancestry to prove how big the German population in the US. Albert Einstein. One of the most influential scientists. He received German citizenship in 1914 and resided in Berlin until 1933, when he left for America to take the position of a professor of theoretical physics at Princeton, New Jersey. At that time, he had renounced his citizenship for political reasons. In 1940, he finally became a US citizen. John Steinbeck, a famous American writer whose ancestry is German. He is well known for the book Of Mice and Men.
Your Royal Highnesses, in Bakrafru, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Swedish Academy for finding my work worthy of this highest honor. In my heart there may be some doubt that I deserve the Nobel Award over other men of letters whom I hold in respect and reverence. But there is no question of my pleasure and pride in having it for myself. It is customary for the recipient of this award to offer personal or scholarly comment on the nature and the direction of literature. At this particular time, however, I think it would be well to consider the high duties and the responsibilities of the makers of literature. Such is the prestige of the Nobel Award and of this place where I stand, that I am impelled not to squeak like a grateful and apologetic mouse, but to roar like a lion out of pride in my profession and in the great and good men who have practiced it through the ages.
I'm old, not obsolete. Old, not obsolete. Old,
They're not obsolete.
not yet.
Listen to me very carefully.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
But why should I?
Because I'm going to say, please.
Where do you think you're going?
Sure.
The captain give you permission?
Hercules goes where he wishes.
Not on this ship, you don't. Now get your carcass below.
Get yours. Give me the damn thing. And let me have a go before I change my mind and write a citation.
You.
Many of you may have seen this last person right here, Arnold Schwarzenegger. His most recognizable achievements were being an actor and the former governor of California. He is Austrian American, but in fact, Austria used to be a part of Germany until the end of World War II. Germans are often portrayed as negative characters from the onset of World War II. It was increasingly inscribed as a trait of Nazis. These stereotypes have changed throughout time, but they continue to be a common element in filmmaking and related cultural fields. The portrayal of Nazis like Germanic characters in movies can be attributed to the fear of German. Fun fact! Some German immigrants did not fully assimilate into the American culture. These people are so-called the Texas German. What's interesting about them is the language they speak. The older generation tend to speak German but adopt some English words into their dialects.
Leute, die als Muttersprache Deutsch sprechen. Nicht vielleicht eingewandert, sondern viele Generationen hat sich das Deutsche hier erhalten. Und bis nach dem Zweiten Weltkrieg haben die Kinder als erste Sprache hier noch Deutsch gelernt.
Und nach dem Zweiten Weltkrieg gab es auch also keine deutschen Schulen mehr.
Nein. Die sagen, die Leute durften hier überhaupt kein Deutsch reden während dem Krieg.
Did you teach your children German?
Nine, but they took, all three of them took German in high school. They can understand, but they can't talk.
They said this area in Texas, and they called it Little Germany. They said it looks so much like home. It does. It feels like home, so yeah. Little Germany. Yeah.
The Amish. The Amish were a religious group of people who immigrated from Germany. The tradition is so primitive. First of all, these people try to isolate themselves from the outside world. They mostly work on a farm. The Amish refuse to use most kinds of modern technology. Instead, they travel by using a wagon. The Amish village is located in the state of Pennsylvania.
gibt's ein Wiedersehen.
Many families in America nowadays are definitely of German descent. The Germans had settled down and built up their own communities in various parts of America. The legacy still exists prominently today. And that is the brief story about the Deutsche Amerikaner. Thank you.
Bye.